You're not short on time, you're leaking it. Minute by minute. You're surrendering your future to noise disguised as urgency. Discipline isn't control, it's liberation. It's how you remind yourself that your life deserves rhythm, purpose, and presence. When you stop living on autopilot and start choosing consciously, you don't just modify your habits, you transform your identity. Every repeated choice, every aligned action, lays a quiet foundation for who you are becoming, even when no one is watching. And then one day, you realize discipline is no longer something you do, it's who you are. Not forced, not performative, just embodied. Not because you tried harder, but because you finally started living on purpose. Discipline isn't about rules or rigidity. It's not a punishment, a cage, or a rejection of joy. At its core, discipline is self-respect made visible. It's how you tell yourself, again and again, that your future is worth more than your impulses. That your dreams matter more than your distractions. That even in your lowest moments, your standards remain higher than your circumstances. Ask yourself this: who are you when no one's watching? Not when the pressure is on. Not when there's praise or deadlines. But in those quiet, unguarded moments, when it's just you, your choices, and the person you're becoming. Because that's where true discipline lives. Not in apps, not in planners, but in those private crossroads where you decide, do I honor myself? Or do I abandon my potential again? Most people mistake discipline for self-denial. But the truth is, real discipline isn't about depriving yourself, it's about deciding for yourself. It's the ability to make choices today that protect your tomorrow. Not because it's easy, but because it's sacred. It's choosing what strengthens you over what soothes you. It's giving yourself what you need, not just what you want. The Stoics understood this centuries ago. They didn't wait for motivation. They didn't rely on willpower. They trained their minds to obey principle over impulse, reason over emotion, and long-term virtue over short-term relief. They weren't perfect, but they were intentional. They knew that if you don't master yourself, something else will: your cravings, your mood, your environment, your fear. And when you're ruled by the loudest voice in the room, you lose the quiet wisdom within. Discipline is the anchor, the stabilizer, the framework that holds you up when everything else is unstable. And you can see it in the little things: when your alarm goes off and you get up, not because you feel like it, but because you promised yourself you would. When you choose silence over social media. When you choose discomfort over delay. These aren't small decisions. They're declarations. Each time you act in alignment with your future, you vote for the self you're building. Each time you delay gratification, you deepen your roots. Each time you honor your own word, you strengthen your trust in yourself, and that trust becomes unshakable. You no longer rely on external motivation because the discipline lives in your bones. It's who you are, not something you chase. Discipline is also contagious. When you start respecting your own time, others begin to. When you set boundaries, not with force, but with clarity, you begin to reshape how people treat you. The world responds to the standard you uphold. And when you carry yourself with quiet authority, the kind that doesn't scream but simply exists, people notice, even if you say nothing at all. But let's be honest, discipline will challenge you. It will confront your excuses. It will expose the lies you've told yourself, about time, about commitment, about what you can handle. It will force you to stop fantasizing about potential and start working for it. It's not glamorous. It's not flashy. It's not viral. But it's real. And it's rare. Why do so many people avoid it? Because living in the illusion of later feels safer than facing the discomfort of now. Because rewriting your story takes work. Because holding yourself to a higher standard means letting go of the patterns that kept you comfortable. But comfort is a trap. Growth doesn't come from ease. It comes from effort, intentional, deliberate effort. The Stoics didn't wait for life to be easy. They trained for life as it is, unpredictable, painful, beautiful. They chose to live by inner law, not outer chaos. And you can too. But it starts with asking, what am I choosing today? Where am I betraying myself? Where am I trading long-term peace for short-term relief? And most importantly, what would happen if I stopped abandoning myself? Because that's what lack of discipline is. It's self-abandonment. It's walking away from your vision. It's choosing momentary comfort over lasting meaning. But the good news is, you can return. Right now. Not with a dramatic change, but with one decision. One promise kept. One breath taken before reacting. 1 hour protected. One standard reclaimed. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be rigid. You just have to be committed. Committed to remembering who you are. Even when it's hard. Committed to acting from alignment. Even when no one sees. Committed to building, brick by brick, the version of you who doesn't flinch in the face of difficulty. Who doesn't negotiate with distraction. Who doesn't collapse under chaos. Discipline isn't about being the strongest, the fastest, the most productive. It's about being the most consistent with who you say you are. It's about showing up, not for the world's applause, but for your own integrity. It's about becoming the kind of person who doesn't need external permission to live on purpose. And that person already lives inside you. You just have to start listening. So the next time you feel resistance, remember this, that resistance isn't your enemy. It's your signal. It means you're standing at a threshold between who you were and who you're becoming. And the choice is yours. Not someday. Not later. Now. Not all discipline is created equal. And not all discipline is yours to borrow. In a world obsessed with routines, checklists, and 10-step morning rituals, it's easy to forget one truth: if your structure doesn't match your nature, it becomes a cage, not a compass. What empowers one person might suffocate another. What gives clarity to a soldier might crush the spirit of a poet. And so the discipline you build must begin with an understanding of yourself, not the productivity guru, not the influencer, not the idealized version of success sold to you, but you. In your deepest, most honest form. The Stoics knew this well. Epictetus, born a slave, didn't need the same rhythm as Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome. Their circumstances were worlds apart. Yet both practiced fierce self-discipline, tailored to their roles, to their reality, to their truth. Because discipline isn't about imitation. It's about integration. It's not about copying what works for others. It's about creating what works for you. Let's make this real. Imagine someone forcing themselves into a 5 a.m. wake-up. Not because it aligns with their energy, but because they believe it's the hallmark of high achievers. Every morning becomes a battle. They snooze. They resent the alarm. They feel like a failure. But what if their most focused, creative hours begin at 9 p.m.? What if their inner fire burns brightest when the world is quiet? True discipline means listening to that inner rhythm and building around it. It means aligning with your biology instead of fighting it. It means honoring your unique flow, not to indulge laziness, but to unlock sustainability. Because discipline that doesn't honor your nature will always decay under pressure. It won't last. And worse, It might convince you that you're the problem when it's the system that doesn't fit. So ask yourself, what kind of rhythm supports my clarity? Do I work best in long, focused sprints or short, timed bursts? Do I need movement to ground me or stillness to center me? Do I thrive in early starts or quiet nights? Your answers aren't weaknesses. They're your blueprint. Use them. Discipline doesn't mean controlling every moment. It means designing the day with intention. It's not about rigidity, it's about rhythm. It's not about being perfect, it's about being consistent in a way you can sustain. Even creativity, often romanticized as chaotic and spontaneous, flourishes under the right constraints. Poets need silence. Musicians need practice. Athletes need rest. Freedom, paradoxically, is born from structure, and yet, structure has a reputation problem. It's often seen as cold, mechanical, soul-sapping. But what if structure isn't punishment? What if it's mercy? Mercy for your attention, constantly bombarded. Mercy for your emotions, easily hijacked. Mercy for your energy, scattered in too many directions. When you build a structure that supports your inner flow, you stop living in reactivity. You stop being pulled by every notification, every distraction, every mood swing. You reclaim your time, not just on paper, but in spirit. And with that time, you begin to create, to build, to rest, to live with depth, not just speed. Without structure, you don't get spontaneity. You get fragmentation. You don't get freedom. You get confusion. And over time, that confusion becomes suffering. Quiet, slow, invisible suffering that whispers, "Why am I always behind? Why can't I focus? Why do I feel lost?" The Stoics warned us. They said, if you don't choose your direction, the world will choose for you. And the world doesn't care about your peace. It rewards urgency. It profits off your distraction. So if you don't design your life, you will be drafted into someone else's. Let's return to the practical. Start small. Choose 1 hour of your day to protect. Maybe your morning. Maybe your evening. Maybe the first 30 minutes after lunch. Decide what happens there, and more importantly, what doesn't. No scrolling. No reacting. No noise. Just action, aligned with your priorities. That small boundary becomes a fortress, a lighthouse, a declaration, and then you build from there. One ritual, one routine, one decision at a time. Until structure isn't something you fight against, it's something that frees you. Because real structure doesn't restrict your energy. It refines it. Like a river, given direction, your power begins to flow stronger, deeper, clearer. And here's what happens when you begin to live with this kind of discipline, not borrowed, not forced, but built from within. Life starts to simplify. You stop chasing every shiny object. You stop measuring yourself against others. You stop panicking at every twist in the road. Because you've built a rhythm that holds you, a structure that steadies you, a discipline that feels like home. This is the shift that matters. Not from laziness to productivity, but from fragmentation to flow, from noise to signal, from reaction to rhythm. Discipline stops being something you try. It becomes something you are. So pause today and ask, where am I still living inside someone else's system? Where am I forcing discipline that doesn't align with my design? And more importantly, what would it look like to trust myself enough to build my own? Because the truth is this, you are not broken. You are misaligned. And discipline, true, sustainable, self-honoring discipline, isn't about changing who you are. It's about supporting who you've always been. And when you do that, when you stop fighting your nature and start designing for it, everything changes. Focus sharpens. Peace returns. And your life, once ruled by chaos, begins to move to the beat of your own intention. That's not just discipline. That's power. Disorder doesn't arrive with a roar. It creeps in softly, through cluttered desks, ignored alarms, skipped routines, unfinished tasks. It hides in the comfort of tomorrow, in the illusion of I'll get to it later. It wears the mask of harmless delay but quietly chips away at your inner foundation. And by the time you notice the cracks, you've already been living in collapse. The Stoics warned us, not about the big failures, but the small neglects. Because that's how discipline dies, not in a dramatic fall, but in daily erosion. A missed journal entry, a habit skipped, a decision avoided, a conversation postponed. One by one, they accumulate, until you wake up and wonder, how did I get so far from who I wanted to be? We tend to think of order as external, neatly arranged calendars, clean spaces, to-do lists. But true order begins inside. It's mental architecture, emotional clarity, a commitment to structure that safeguards your energy, your peace, and your priorities. Without that inner scaffolding, even the most structured life falls apart. And here's the painful truth: the longer you tolerate disorder, the heavier it gets. It starts as mess, then becomes mental noise. The unread messages turn into guilt. The open tabs become overwhelm. The undone tasks start whispering, "You're behind. You're failing." Not because they matter in themselves, but because they symbolize the decay of your intention. Seneca once wrote, "It's not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." That waste rarely comes from laziness, it comes from a lack of clarity. When you don't know what matters, everything demands your attention. When you don't give your time a direction, the world will drag it toward distraction. And slowly, your days become reaction, not creation. Your energy is spent responding, not building. But the good news is this: you can reclaim order. You can redraw the boundaries of your life. And you don't need a new system to start, you just need a decision. Not a perfect one, not a complete one, just a clear one. Because clarity is what discipline feeds on. And where there is clarity, there is strength. Start by identifying where disorder hides. Maybe it's your morning, your workspace, your digital life. Maybe it's the unresolved conversations, the goals that never get scheduled, the phone that's always within reach. Name the leak, then patch it. Not because you need to control everything, but because you deserve to live without the weight of what's undone. Order isn't rigidity. It's intentional rhythm. It's a practice of protecting what matters. A bedtime, a journal, a walk without your phone. These aren't restrictions. They're rescue missions, for your focus, your spirit, your sanity. When your time has shape, your thoughts settle. When your space is clear, your emotions follow. When your habits are deliberate, your confidence grows. Think of it like music. Structure isn't the enemy of flow, it's what gives flow form. Without tempo, rhythm becomes noise. Without rest, melody becomes chaos. In the same way, your life needs containers, not to trap you, but to free you. Because when the mind knows what to expect, it begins to relax. And from that stillness, discipline arises. But let's go deeper. Why is it so hard to create order? Why do we keep slipping back into disarray? It's not just forgetfulness. It's fear. Fear of commitment. Fear of failure. fear that structure means less freedom. But that's the illusion. Because the more scattered your life becomes, the more you lose choice. And discipline, when rightly built, is a reclamation of choice. When you design your day, you don't kill spontaneity, you give it space. When you block time for rest, creativity flourishes. When you say no to what's urgent, you say yes to what's essential. That's not confinement. That's freedom by design. And here's the transformation: as you begin to live with order, your mind shifts. The chaos you once tolerated becomes intolerable. The clutter you once ignored begins to feel like a weight. You start craving clarity the way you once craved comfort. Because deep down, your soul was never meant to live in confusion. So what does this look like in practice? It's choosing to plan your day before the world does. It's shutting down screens an hour before bed. It's keeping your promises, even the silent ones. It's facing the task instead of postponing it. Not for perfection, but for presence. Not because you should, but because you finally want to feel whole again. It's looking at your life and asking, what do I need to clean up to hear myself again? Maybe it's the cluttered room. Maybe it's the unspoken truth. Maybe it's the task you've been avoiding for months. Whatever it is, clear it. And in that clearing, watch what returns: focus, peace, power, self-respect. Because this is what the Stoics understood: a disciplined life isn't one of constant doing. It's a life of aligned doing, where your outer world supports your inner values. Where the noise is turned down enough to hear your direction again. Where life stops happening to you, and starts flowing through you. So today, make one decision, one act of order, lay one brick. Because if you don't build the structure, no one will do it for you. And without it, you'll always be at the mercy of everything outside yourself. But with it, you become the architect of your time, the guardian of your focus, the keeper of your own peace. And from that place, anything becomes possible. Success is a double-edged sword. It flatters you, soothes you, and if you're not careful, it seduces you into softness. The very thing you worked for begins to lull you into forgetting what built it in the first place: your discipline. When you're hungry, your edge is sharp, you're alert, focused, intentional. But when comfort arrives, when the paycheck clears, the applause comes, the routine feels stable, it's easy to believe the work is done, that you've arrived, that you can relax your standards. That's the beginning of the quiet decline. The Stoics warned us of this trap again and again. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men in the world, didn't let his position blind him. He wrote daily reminders not to fall into laziness, arrogance, or indulgence. Why? Because he knew the threat wasn't failure, it was success without vigilance. Think about it: how many times have you pushed yourself toward a goal, achieved it, and then let your standards drop? You got in shape, then stopped showing up. You started a habit, then slipped once and never returned. You reached a milestone and gave yourself a break, but that break became your new baseline. This is where discipline after success becomes essential. When desperation no longer drives you, you must let devotion take its place. You no longer train because you're behind. You train because you're committed. Because you understand that success is not a finish line, it's a platform. A place to elevate, not to coast. So, how do you stay sharp in seasons of ease? By refining, not relaxing. By asking better questions. What needs tuning now? Where am I slipping in subtle ways? What small cracks am I ignoring? The most dangerous losses don't come from collapse. They come from erosion, bit by bit. Habit by habit. Excuse by excuse. Discipline in success looks different. It's quieter. less visible. It's not the fire of urgency, it's the steady flame of excellence. It's not driven by fear, it's driven by standards. You begin to train for mastery, not performance. For character, not comparison. And let's be clear, this isn't about never resting. Rest is vital. Strategic rest renews you. But there's a difference between resting with intention and drifting without awareness. One restores your discipline. The other dissolves it. Success will tempt you to believe you're finished. That you've earned the right to ease. And yes, you've earned a pause, but not a surrender. Because the moment you stop refining yourself, you start reinforcing mediocrity. Think of a blade. When it's sharp, it cuts clean. But leave it untouched, unsharpened. And it does, even if it's never used. Success without continued discipline dulls your edge in the same way. You might not notice it right away. But one day, when resistance comes, you'll find yourself unprepared. So sharpen often. Evaluate regularly. Don't wait for decline to jolt you into action. Stay ahead of erosion. Use your victories as fuel, not comfort. Let them remind you of what's possible when you stay aligned. And when you do slip, which you will, don't shame yourself. Just re-enter. Return to the rhythm. Recommit to the code. Not because you've failed, but because you remember who you are. That's the heart of disciplined living. It's not perfection. It's remembrance. It's the repeated choice to keep showing up, not because you have to, but because you refuse to become less than your potential. And here's another illusion to dismantle: motivation. Stop waiting for it. Stop thinking it's a sign. Stop assuming you need to feel ready to move. Motivation is not a spark. It's a byproduct. It doesn't come first, it comes after. After the action. After the motion. After you begin. You want to feel focused? Move. You want to feel strong? Act. You want clarity? Start. That's how it works. The mind loves to delay. It whispers. Not yet. Just one more minute. Let's wait for a better time. But if you keep waiting for the mood to strike, you'll stay stuck forever. Discipline doesn't consult feelings. It consults principles. It doesn't ask, "Do I feel like it?" It asks, "What needs to be done?" Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." That's not a suggestion. That's a command. You decide who you want to become. And then you act as if you're already that person. Not to fake it. To form it. The disciplined person doesn't wait for alignment. They create it. They move. And in the movement, alignment emerges. The first step clears the fog. The first breath calms the chaos. The first decision ignites the momentum. So stop waiting for motivation. Make the decision now. Because when you learn to act without needing to feel ready, you gain a power most people never touch. You become the kind of person who doesn't stall, who doesn't crumble, who doesn't give their destiny away to their distractions. You become steady, anchored, reliable, especially when it's hard. Let's get practical. You don't feel like working out? Put on your shoes. 5 minutes of movement. You don't want to write? Open the document. Type one sentence. You dread the uncomfortable task. Set a timer for 10 minutes and begin. The point is not the outcome. It's the initiation. Because once you move, resistance weakens. Once you start, the excuses lose their grip. Once you act, the mind follows. The Stoics understood this deeply. The greatest resistance lies at the beginning. The mind resists what feels hard not because it's impossible, but because it fears the unknown. But once you cross that threshold, something remarkable happens. You enter flow. You enter presence. You return to power. And if you repeat this long enough, it becomes who you are. Not someone who waits, but someone who moves. Someone who leads with intention, not emotion. Someone who no longer asks, "Do I feel like it?" but simply decides, "This is what I do." That's not cold. That's sacred. Because in a world built on distraction, the ability to act without waiting is revolutionary. And the truth is this: you don't need more motivation. You need more movement. You don't need inspiration. You need initiation. Because discipline isn't a trait you're born with. It's a muscle you build. And the more often you flex it, especially when it's hard, the stronger it becomes. So act today. Especially when you don't feel like it. That's when it counts the most. How much of your life is truly chosen, and how much is simply inherited noise? It's a question that cuts deeper than it first appears. Because most of us, if we're honest, aren't really living. We're reacting. Following patterns we never questioned. Playing roles we never consciously chose. Carrying beliefs, habits, and narratives passed down by parents, culture, trauma, or survival. We wake up and reach for the phone before our feet hit the ground, not because it's a choice, but because it's what we've always done. We chase goals not rooted in personal meaning, but in comparison. We move through our days under the spell of routine, mistaking momentum for purpose. The Stoics, and later Carl Jung, warned us about this drift. Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That's not a poetic idea. It's a psychological law. If you don't examine your patterns, they become prisons. You'll think you're making choices, but in truth, you're just repeating behaviors that were installed long ago. This is why discipline isn't just effort, it's awareness. It's not just grinding harder. It's asking, is what I'm doing aligned with who I want to become, or just familiar? Discipline at its highest level is the discipline of consciousness. It's choosing your responses instead of reacting from your programming. It's the pause before the yes, the breath before the reaction, the reflection before the decision. It's asking, is this mine? Or was this handed to me by someone else's fear? Someone else's script? Someone else's unmet need? Let's be honest. Many people confuse overworking with drive. But what if that drive is just a deep-seated belief that rest equals worthlessness? What if your inability to stop isn't about passion, it's about fear of being forgotten? These aren't conscious choices. These are survival responses. They look like discipline, but they are disguise. They are not rooted in truth, they are rooted in wounds. That's why real discipline is uncomfortable. Because it forces you to face the stories that shaped you. It asks you to strip away the layers that protected you. The ones that were necessary in the past but are now holding you back. It asks you to stop performing and start participating in your own life. And that participation begins with one word: choice. What if today you chose to live 1 hour in alignment? What if you stopped for just 5 minutes and asked, what do I want to feel at the end of this day? What if you designed your evening around restoration, instead of scrolling? What if you let go of the belief that rest is laziness, and started treating it like a skill? Every conscious choice you make weakens the grip of unconscious habits. You begin to rewire yourself, not through force, but through clarity. Not through control, but through curiosity. Discipline becomes less about resisting temptation and more about aligning with intention. You stop trying to suppress urges and start asking what they're really trying to tell you. You stop forcing behavior and start designing an environment that supports your higher self. This is why silence matters. Reflection matters. Stillness matters. Because only in those quiet spaces can you see clearly what you've been reacting to. And only through clarity can you create a new path. So, what does this look like in everyday life? It's choosing to begin the morning in silence instead of stimulation. It's noticing when you're about to react, and deciding to respond instead. It's catching yourself in an old belief, I can't. I'm not enough. I'll start tomorrow, and saying, that's not mine anymore. These acts are invisible to the world. But they are powerful. Because they are no longer default. They are chosen. And when your life is filled with chosen action, even the smallest task becomes sacred. To live with discipline is not to live with rigidity. It is to live with reverence, for your mind, for your time, for your direction. It is to choose presence over programming. To act from alignment, not assumption. This doesn't mean throwing away everything from your past. It means auditing it. Keeping what empowers you. Letting go of what distorts you. Redesigning what needs to be reshaped. You are not starting from scratch, you are sculpting from truth. And here's something else that's true. Your private actions matter more than your public image. In fact, your private discipline is what your public confidence is built on. We live in a world obsessed with performance, with appearances, with curated moments. But who you are in public means nothing if it isn't rooted in who you are in private. Anyone can post wisdom. Few live it. Anyone can talk about self-control. Few practice it in silence. Anyone can promise change. Few build it behind closed doors. But the Stoics knew, character is carved in solitude. In the dark, uncelebrated hours. In the decisions no one will see. In the promises kept when there's no applause. That's where the real foundation is laid. When you honor your own word privately, your confidence grows quietly, not as arrogance, but as self-trust. You begin to walk differently, not for show, but from knowing. You don't need to prove anything, because you've already proven it to yourself. And the opposite is also true. Break your own word often enough, and you'll feel it in your posture, your decisions, your voice. You'll start to wonder if you can trust yourself. And that doubt will bleed into everything, from your relationships to your goals to your dreams. That's why this work is sacred. Because every choice you make when no one is watching is casting a vote for the future you. And here's the deeper truth: when your private life is in order, your public life becomes effortless. You don't need to wear a mask. You don't need to impress. You simply live. And in that quiet integrity, people feel something different. Something real. So ask yourself, who am I when the lights are off? When the pressure is gone? When no one is watching? Because that person, that version of you, is the one building your future. And the more disciplined, intentional, and honest that version becomes, the more unstoppable your public life becomes. Not because you're pretending, but because you're aligned. That's the kind of discipline that can't be shaken. Because it isn't a performance, it's a promise. We live in a dopamine-saturated world. A world designed to hijack your attention, flood your senses, and rewire your brain to crave stimulation instead of satisfaction. Scrolls, likes, notifications, each one a hit of artificial pleasure. Harmless in isolation, devastating in accumulation. The result? A restless mind, a scattered focus, a constant hunger for the next spike, the next hit, the next distraction. And in this environment, discipline becomes not just a practice, but an act of rebellion. The Stoics didn't have smartphones, but they understood this principle well. Not everything that feels good is good for you. Not every impulse deserves to be followed. And not every pleasure leads to peace. They trained themselves to distinguish between what satisfied the senses and what nourished the soul. Between the easy reward and the lasting one. Between the fleeting and the foundational. This is the path of modern discipline, not to eliminate dopamine, but to rewire your reward system. To stop chasing novelty and start cultivating depth. To replace quick hits with quiet victories. Not because you're punishing yourself, but because you're ready to reclaim your mind. Start small. Notice where your energy goes. Track the moments you feel scattered. The apps that consume you. The routines that drain instead of restore. Begin to design your environment to reduce temptation. Not by force, but by intention. Put your phone in another room when you write. Turn off notifications for a day. Replace passive consumption with active creation. Take a walk instead of scrolling. Read 5 pages instead of refreshing a feed. Not because these acts are dramatic, but because they are deliberate. Deliberate action is how you begin to tame the impulse beast. You start teaching your brain that focus is possible, that stillness is safe, that effort can be pleasurable. And slowly, something remarkable begins to happen. The noise quiets. The cravings dull. The clarity returns. You stop needing the world to entertain you every second. You begin to enjoy the calm of a single task. The flow of deep work. The pride of showing up fully. Your brain, once hijacked, begins to heal. And discipline, once a burden, becomes a form of joy. Because it's no longer about denial. It's about design. Designing a life where the rewards are real. Where growth feels better than escape. Where progress feels more satisfying than indulgence. Where you no longer settle for crumbs of validation, but feast on the richness of alignment. This isn't just neuroscience. It's philosophy in motion. The Stoics called it living according to nature. Not the world's nature. Your nature. Your deepest values. Your clearest vision. Your truest rhythm. And the more you build around that, around what strengthens rather than numbs, the less discipline feels like discipline. It feels like coming home. That's what this path offers. Not perfection. Not deprivation. But peace, earned through presence. So the next time you reach for your phone, pause. Ask, am I seeking pleasure or avoiding purpose? And then decide. Not as a reaction, but as a response. A conscious return to who you are when the noise fades and the mission rises. That's discipline at its highest form. Not resistance. Redirection. Structure is not a cage. It's a kindness. In a world that constantly pulls you in every direction, structure is a quiet act of self-respect. It says, I know what matters, and I will protect it. So many people fear structure, thinking it will rob them of spontaneity. But the opposite is true. Without structure, your day becomes fragmented. You bounce from task to task, pulled by urgency rather than intention. You respond instead of create. And at the end of the day, you feel exhausted, not because you did too much, but because you did it all without rhythm. The Stoics understood that life without order is life without peace. They didn't advocate rigidity for the sake of control. They embraced rhythm for the sake of clarity. Morning routines. Evening reflections. Time blocks, not to look productive, but to stay aligned. Because when your day has rhythm, your mind calms, your energy has direction, and your soul gets the space it needs to breathe. That's not restriction. That's mercy. Structure protects you from your lower impulses. It gives your higher self a fighting chance. When you've decided in advance what matters most, you don't need to waste willpower every hour negotiating with distraction. You follow the path you've already paved. And in that path, freedom unfolds. Let's be clear, structure doesn't mean cramming every moment with productivity. It means giving shape to your day. It means carving out time for what refuels you, not just what depletes you. It means protecting time for silence, for movement, for joy, for focus, for rest. Without structure, even good intentions dissolve. You may want to meditate, to write, to study, to train, but without a time, a place, a container, it slips through the cracks of your overstimulated day. And the cost isn't just missed goals. It's missed self-respect. Because every time you abandon what you said mattered, you lose a bit of trust in yourself. But when you follow through, not perfectly, but consistently, you build that trust back. And that trust becomes a foundation for discipline that doesn't feel heavy. It feels reliable, natural, grounded. Even creativity needs boundaries. The best artists, musicians, and thinkers don't wait for inspiration. They create the conditions for it. They block out time. They eliminate distractions. They enter the same space again and again, not because it's rigid, but because it becomes sacred. Structure is sacred. A calendar that reflects your values. A routine that supports your purpose. A system that protects your mind from chaos. That's not a prison. That's a path. So where can you begin? Start by identifying the first and last hour of your day. Shape them. Don't let them be accidents. Wake without a screen. End without a scroll. Add something nourishing: reflection, movement, gratitude, breath. These anchors, small as they seem, create a frame around your life. Then protect one focused block of time. 1 hour for deep work, or for learning, or for creating. Make it non-negotiable. Watch how it changes your relationship with time, and with yourself. Finally, build margins. Time to pause, to reset, to step back. Because structure isn't about doing more. It's about doing what matters with more presence and less chaos. The more structure you build around what matters, the more freedom you feel within it. Because structure doesn't imprison you. It supports you. It steadies you. It brings you back to yourself, again and again. That's the power of a disciplined life by design. Not rigid, rooted. Your identity is not fixed, it's formed. Action by action. Habit by habit. Decision by decision. You are shaping the kind of person you become. This is the most overlooked truth of discipline: you're not just changing behavior. You're rehearsing yourself. Every time you make a decision, you're casting a vote. Not just for what happens next, but for who you believe you are. Do that often enough, and belief becomes biology. Personality becomes pattern. Discipline becomes identity. That's why Stoic practice was never about one-off choices. It was about embodiment. Becoming the kind of person who does the right thing not because they have to, but because it's who they are. Discipline wasn't a burden. It was a mirror. A daily reflection of alignment. Ask yourself, who am I becoming through my actions? Not in theory. Not in 5 years. But right now, this week. This hour. Am I reinforcing the version of me that's reactive, scattered, and short-sighted? Or am I training the version that is calm, clear, and anchored? The shift happens not when you feel ready, but when you start acting like the person you intend to be. A person of discipline doesn't wait for conditions to be perfect. They become the kind of person who creates their own clarity. It's not about faking it. It's about practicing it. You don't pretend to be confident, you practice confidence. You don't pretend to be strong, you show up when it's hard. And eventually, what starts as effort becomes evidence. You look back and realize, I no longer need to try to be this person. I am this person. Let's take examples. You want to be a writer? Then you write, every day. Not just when inspiration hits, but because writing is who you are. You want to be someone who's healthy? Then you show up to your training, on the good days and the heavy ones. You want to be grounded in conversation? Then you pause before reacting, even when the moment tugs at your emotions. Each of these actions, repeated, builds a structure deeper than muscle. It builds your self-image. And that self-image determines what becomes possible for you. That's why inconsistency hurts more than just momentum, it fractures identity. Every time you say you'll do something and you don't, you're not just losing time. You're training yourself not to believe your own voice. But the reverse is also true. One small promise kept, that's the start of transformation. You build self-trust like you build strength, through reps. And every rep reinforces the belief, I can count on myself. That belief is power. It doesn't shout. It doesn't need to. It moves quietly, persistently. And in a world full of noise, that kind of inner steadiness is magnetic. So how do you align your identity with your highest self? You start now. You act as if the version of you respect most is already within you. Because they are. Not a fantasy. A seed. And discipline is how you water it, daily. This is not about hustle. Or punishment. Or becoming someone else. This is about integrity. About narrowing the gap between who you want to be and how you actually live. Because discipline is not just doing what's hard. It's doing what's honest. And the most honest question you can ask is this: are my actions helping me become someone I trust? If the answer is no, shift. No shame. No delay. Just shift. Pick one behavior. One routine. One moment. Begin again. And the next day, do it again. That's how the identity is sculpted. Not in a single grand decision, but in the small, repeated rituals that say, this is who I am, and I no longer abandon myself. That's the essence of real, lasting discipline. It's not external, it's embodied. Time is not something you find, it's something you build with. Each minute, each hour, is not just passing by. It's shaping you. And whether you use it intentionally or not, it's being used. Discipline asks, are you building something worthy with it? The Stoics treated time as sacred currency. Not because they feared death, but because they honored life. They knew every moment, every action, was a brick in the architecture of your becoming. The only question was, what are you constructing? Most people don't waste time by doing nothing. They waste it by doing too much of the wrong things. 1,000 micro-decisions misaligned with their purpose. A life fragmented into busyness, not wholeness. But here's the power of disciplined awareness: when you realize that every minute is a vote for your future, you stop spending time, you start investing it. You write the page instead of scrolling. You go for the walk instead of hitting snooze. You journal instead of numbing. You rest with intention instead of escaping through exhaustion. These moments may seem small, but like bricks, they accumulate, layer by layer. They create a structure you either stand tall in, or collapse under. And here's what most people forget: you don't have to build it all in a day. You just have to place one brick. Well, that's the beauty of discipline. It breaks down the overwhelming into the actionable. It says, just this hour. Just this task. Just this promise. Because life isn't transformed by dramatic declarations. It's transformed by consistent alignment. Think of someone you admire. Not for their status, but their presence, their steadiness, their strength of character. That wasn't built by one lucky moment. It was forged in the repetition of aligned action. Minute by minute. Decision by decision. You have the same minutes. The same hours. The same choice. So why do we keep drifting? Because we forget that time isn't neutral. It either builds you or breaks you. It either clarifies your path or clutters it. It either becomes the foundation of your future or the evidence of your avoidance. That's why discipline is essential. Not because it makes you perfect, but because it brings you back to what matters. And when you fall behind, which you will, it reminds you, just return. Lay one more brick. One good decision. One aligned hour. Then again. Then again. Because time will pass anyway. The question is, will you passively observe it, or will you actively shape it? You don't need more time. You need more intention. You don't need more hours. You need more alignment within the ones you already have. So pause and ask, where am I leaking time? Where am I letting distraction borrow from my future? Where am I confusing activity with progress? Then choose again. Choose to make this hour one of integrity. Choose to make this minute one of purpose. Choose to build what you'll one day stand on. With pride. That's what discipline gives you, not just control of your time, but meaning within it. Because every moment you live in alignment, you're not just managing time, you're honoring your life. Growth without reflection is just motion. Discipline without measurement is just effort without evolution. You can be busy every day and still go nowhere. You can hustle hard and still drift off course, unless you stop, observe, and course correct. The Stoics knew this. That's why Marcus Aurelius journaled each night, not to impress, but to realign. Not to track perfection, but to seek progress. He asked, where did I fall short? What did I do well? What can I do better tomorrow? These questions aren't small, they're sacred. Because without awareness, you repeat the same cycles. Without tracking, you don't grow, you just loop. And yet, so few people measure their discipline. They assume if it feels hard, it must be working. But difficulty isn't progress. Repetition isn't mastery. What matters is whether you're moving in the direction that aligns with who you're trying to become. So start measuring, not for punishment, but for clarity. How many promises to yourself do you actually keep? How often do you trade discomfort now for peace later? What patterns break you down? And which ones build you up? You don't need a spreadsheet to answer these. You just need honesty. A journal. A moment. A question asked at the end of each day. Did I live aligned with my standards, or did I drift? That question alone, asked consistently, will change your life, because reflection transforms effort into awareness, and awareness transforms discipline into wisdom. You begin to see what actually matters. What rituals fuel you? What habits strain you? What times of day make you stronger, or sabotage you? Then, you adjust. You simplify. You sharpen. Discipline becomes less about doing everything, and more about doing the right things. With fewer excuses and more intention, you begin to build a rhythm not from pressure, but from presence. And in that rhythm, something sacred happens. Discipline stops feeling like a demand. It becomes a form of devotion, a daily return, not to perfection, but to alignment. And alignment, not ambition, is what brings peace. Because the real flex isn't how early you wake up or how much you accomplish. It's how consistently you live in harmony with what you say matters most. That's when discipline becomes who you are. Not a strategy, a standard, not a technique, a truth. And here's the truth most people avoid. Discipline doesn't chain you. It frees you. It frees you from regret. It frees you from confusion. It frees you from the weight of living someone else's life. Discipline gives you your time back, your energy back, your clarity back, your soul back. It turns chaos into order, noise into signal, dreams into structure. You stop hoping for motivation. You stop performing for others. You stop apologizing for your priorities. You act, you build, you realign. And when you fall, you rise, not out of guilt, but out of commitment. Because discipline is not perfection. It is permission, the permission to return again and again to your values, your mission, your truth. So let this be your reminder: you are not lazy. You are capable. You are not broken. You are becoming. You don't need a new identity. You need to start honoring the one that's already within you. Let every breath be a reset. Let every moment be a vote. Let every day be a chance to rebuild what distraction tried to destroy. This life, your life, is not waiting. It's unfolding. Right now. In every habit. Every word. Every choice. So walk your path, not with fear, but with fire. And if the world doesn't understand, let them watch in silence as you create a life of extraordinary alignment, one sacred discipline at a time. Not because you want to impress anyone, but because you finally decided, I am worth showing up for. This isn't just a philosophy. It's not just a mindset. It's a new way of being, one that doesn't wait to feel ready, doesn't beg for motivation, and doesn't need permission to begin. Because the truth is, no one is coming to build your discipline for you. No one is coming to save your focus, guard your peace, or create your structure. That responsibility, and that power, has always been yours. So the question now is simple: will you claim it? Because the future isn't created in the distance. It's shaped in your next decision. In the next moment you choose presence over escape, stillness over noise, alignment over appearance. That's where transformation begins. Not in a perfect morning, not in an unbroken streak, but in the sacred choice to start again, today. You are not meant to drift. You are not built for chaos. You were made for rhythm, for direction, for clarity. And the beautiful thing is, you don't need to change everything. You just need to keep one promise. Just one. Then another. And another. That's how trust is restored. That's how character is sculpted. You won't always feel like it. That's okay. You don't need to feel like the person you're becoming. You just need to act like them long enough for your body and mind to catch up. That's the truth no one tells you. Identity is trained. And once you've trained yourself to follow through, especially when it's difficult, you become unstoppable. Not because life gets easier, but because you become clearer. You stop being dragged by the current, and start steering the ship. That's when everything changes. Not suddenly. Not dramatically. Quietly. Steadily. Through small, repeated moments of integrity. So let this be the moment you stop waiting. Stop waiting for the mood to shift. Stop waiting for the fear to leave. Stop waiting for the world to slow down. Instead, decide, this is who I am now. This is how I move now. This is what I stand for now. Not to impress. Not to perform. But to finally live aligned. Because once you build discipline into the bones of your being, no one can take it from you. You become self-led, self-governed, self-respecting, and in a world of chaos, that is your greatest power. So go, build, return to your code, not once, not perfectly, but persistently, because the disciplined life is not a distant destination. It's a sacred way of walking, one intentional step at a time. You stayed until the end, in stillness, in quiet listening, not to find an answer, but to feel something deeper. No applause needed, no reward required, just presence, awareness, at the right moment. Because strength isn't always a roar. Sometimes it's the quiet decision not to quit. If something touched you, hold it close. Not to show the world, but to live by it. Not to speak louder, but to walk steadier. And if you feel this is worth sharing, leave a trace, a thought, a whisper, a silent nod. Not for others, but for the path you're on. Carry this stillness with you. Don't try to change the whole world. Just take one meaningful step, then another, and slowly, you'll see. That's how everything begins to change.